So I'm making the Kindred block, which is block 7 of the Sewcialites quilt along. And so I've got all of my blocks cut out. So the white is my background and the print is going to be the dark blue. So I have my 5 3/8 squares here. I have my 2 1/8 squares here, and then my 2 3/4 squares here. We don't need to use these yet. They actually want us to cut these on the diagonal to make triangles first before we do anything. I am making the 9-inch block for reference. So this is A and D, your blocks A and D, and I have them layered already and lined up really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler, push these to the side a little bit, measure from edge to edge, and cut straight down the middle on top of these. So I've got triangles here, and then I'm going to go through and do the same thing with these 3 1/8 squares. So I have them lined up pretty well. Again, I'm going to go from point to point, and I would go with the ones that line up the best for cuts, because these are probably going to get trimmed down maybe. I haven't looked completely all the way through the project. But these are E and B, which are your 3 1/8 inch squares. Okay, so this one and then one more. Just making sure my corners are lined up to the best of the ability. Corner to corner. It doesn't matter if you cut this way or that way, it's a square. You're going to get the same triangles out of it, as long as your cuts are square. Okay, so I've got my cuts now, and now what it's going to have me do is it's going to have me take, let's see, my C's, which are my background fabric, these ones right here, and it's going to have me take my blues. So I'm going to match these ones, and then this one's is going to go here. So I'm going to take my blues, make sure your fabric is facing the right way, and you are going to be sewing these on like so. Like this. So it makes a nice big square. And then that way you're going to take this one, your background fabric from your 5 3/8, and it's going to pop here. And remember, it's a little smaller because you have to do your seam allowances. So I'm going to sew those, iron them, and come back. So I've done one of the seams now. I've done it up here, and I've done a 1/4 inch allowance. I have a 1/4 inch foot on my sewing machine right now, and I've ironed it towards the dark side. And you can see right here there's this little wing. You can actually just snip it evenly with your white fabric here, just to get it out of the way for what you're going to sew next. So here are my pieces again. And I've got these. And I'm going to fold this over onto here, have this in line with each other, and do a 1/4 inch seam on this side up. And then I'll trim away the excess as well and press towards the dark side as well again. Okay, so I've done my second seam, and now it's made a triangle, and you can see I still have these little tabs here from where I've sewn. I've again ironed to the dark side towards this dark leaf pattern. I'm going to snip this off so that it lays a little better when I sew it. So here's the two pieces, and here is the A fabric that we're going to be using. So So what I like to do, if it still measures a little bigger, because we're probably going to trim this down a little bit, is you kind of just make sure your other piece is kind of evenly in between the larger piece. But it doesn't seem to be too far off. So from edge to edge, you're going to lay it down, and I might pin this just to make sure I have a good edge on here. And of course, the good side's facing towards each other. And I will pin this and come back and sew it, and then press it and show you. Okay, so I've pinned both of them, and you can see this is the white side where it's pinned, and then on here you can see the back side. I've tried to pin this white triangle and this seam as close as possible so that when I do a 1/4 inch, hopefully it's going to hit right where those seams are crossing, so I have a nice point when I open up this little block. So I'm going to sew them and press them and then show you the finished part, like partial 1/4 of this wool block. So now I have sewn them together with a 1/4 inch allowance, and I still have these little tapes. I actually ironed them with the seams open, so that way the dark wasn't going to go onto the white. It still has a pretty nice flat surface, so I think I can get away with it. So I'm going to trim these little tabs down. Just to get them out of the way. And that's 2 of the 4 blocks that you need to make in order to have enough to finish the full block. So I'm halfway through. Okay. So now that these are done, I'm going to stack them and place them over here. Kind of clean up my work area a little bit. And now I have my F's, which are my 2 3/4 squares of my print. And then I have my B's, which are the 2 3/4, the 3 1/8 squares that were cut into triangles. And these are going to look like this. Okay. Once they're sewn up. We're going to do the same thing where we're going to sew these edges, and I'm going to push towards the dark side. And after those are sewn up, then this is going to go on this side like this to create these 4 blocks. So I will start sewing and I will come back to show you the progress. Okay, so I have sewn them with 1/4 inch, and then I have pressed them towards the dark side. And then as you can see, I still have little tags here, so I'm going to trim these off straight with the blue square. And then I'll be taking this triangle and flipping it over and doing a seam along this way, and with this one as well. Okay, so now I have sewn them, and then I've ironed them again to the dark side of the fabric. And now I just have to pin this, flip this over, pin this along, sew it, iron it, and flap it back out, and then I will have my 4 blocks to create the full block. Okay, so I have gone through and I have sewn it, and I have ironed to the dark side of my fabric again. So here are my squares. I've got the little tips that I need to trim off. I'm going to do that really quick. Just trim off the tips. So here they are. And then what we do is the final diagram. So these go diagonally of each other. And then these first two blocks go like this to make your full block. So I'm going to pin these. I'm probably going to sew these two together first and then these two. And then once those are sewn together, then I'm going to flip these down and sew and probably do an open seam or open press on these seams. Okay. Okay, so I am back and I actually pressed my seams towards the dark block, the little dark square block. So that way when I nest these two seams together, I should get a really nice crisp point here in the middle. So I'm going to flip this down, nestle these together, pin here, and then pin on both sides just to make sure things are lining up. Sew it, and then probably press the seams open, and then come back to you and show you when it's finished. And that should be about it for this block. Alright, so this is the finish of the Kindred Spirit. And I actually ironed it open all the way across on that seam. Just I want to make sure that this lays as flat as possible for when I'm quilting it, or whoever's quilting it, but I will most likely be quilting this when it's finished. And so that is the finished Kindred block. Thank you for watching, everybody.